I want to enable other people, right? So like you have goals. I don't want the finances to be something that holds you back from being able to achieve those. Like I want you to be able to find stability and like have more peace in your life, and not have all of the stress and overwhelm that comes along with like, I don't know how to manage my cash flow for my business.
Welcome to another episode of Around the Way podcast, where we help you get around your obstacles and find a way to redesign your life. We are here with the money woman herself. How are you, Sarah?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm amazing. I feel good. It feels like a Friday. Every day as an entrepreneur feels like a Friday.
Or a Monday. Depending on how you look at it.
Depending on how you look at it, for sure.
Yeah.
I know that we are going to have an amazing conversation, but can you just first introduce yourself and tell us how you're impacting the world?
Yes. Well, I'm Sarah Young. First and foremost, I want to say I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I've got an 18-month-old son. He was born 2 weeks before the whole world shut down. So the last year and a half of my life has been extra crazy. And I also run a business. So I'm a CPA, virtual CFO, and I try to impact the world by making, money more approachable and less scary and just more easy and more peaceful for business owners, because I know it's an area where people feel really overwhelmed all the time. And I guess my mission is just to make it to where business owners can find wealth and, reach their goals in life. And, money is a big part of that, like it or not. And so I just try to make that whole process easier for them. And I do that with, right now, we focus on one-on-one, pretty high-touch services where we get all up in your business. So we do, more than just the tax return prep. We're like really getting involved with, growth plans and cash flow and profitability, margins, all that fun stuff. But, in the future, I have this vision that I'm working on of educating more business owners. So I don't think you know this, but I taught for 2 years before I went back to get my master's in accounting. Yep, I taught high school math in Henderson, North Carolina.
Oh, gosh.
So I feel like I'm kind of bringing it all full circle now because I've got this skill set and I have a little bit of an education background. And, I want to make the whole like finance approachable for more people than I can impact with just the done for you, like one-on-one service. So exactly. I really have this vision of, just sort of an education, like learning, making it so like when you start up your business, you think about your money. It's not this big, scary, overwhelming thing.
Why do you believe it's scary and overwhelming? Because I think a lot of business owners don't really understand the importance of knowing your numbers. Why is it so scary?
I think there's a lot of reasons. One is it might just be a mindset thing where a lot of us are told from an early age, I'm not good with math. I'm not good with numbers. This is just something I'm not good at, so I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist, right? Or other people have a lot of anxiety about doing it wrong, right? If I do my books the wrong way, if I do my taxes the wrong way, the IRS is going to come and arrest me, right? Like it's probably not going to happen, but I think there's a lot of fear around doing it wrong.
Exactly.
And two, when you're an entrepreneur, and I get it, you wear all the hats, exactly. Right? You are busy sun up to sundown. You're thinking about big ideas. You're thinking about how to sell, how to serve your clients, and just adding on the numbers can seem like just one more thing that you've got to do. Exactly. And if it's not something that you're naturally inclined to want to do, then I think that leads to people just sort of pushing it to the side and not focusing on it. But in reality, I think like your business is really there to support your life. And if you are not, financially secure, how can you take care of yourself? How can you take care of your family? How can you have an impact on your community? Like you just can't do it. Exactly. So I'm not here to say like do it all for the money, but I think there is an aspect of like make that process easy and approachable so you can kind of have it be, you can just have it taken care of and not stress out about it. And you feel comfortable and confident knowing I've got this. I'm going to be able to take care of everybody. I can grow my business. I can be profitable. I can do whatever it is I want to do.
So when you think about that young entrepreneur or that person that is already been an entrepreneur, but they're trying to really get to the next level. You know, when we think about the statistic that 90% of businesses fail because they're undercapitalized, they're just not making enough money, or they're making enough, but they don't understand the importance of profit margins. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to them? Like, what would be advice that you would give those people?
Yeah. So I'll say I'm in a pretty similar situation. I'm going through it myself, which helps me because
Wow.
I get it. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
I'm in this position where I've, grown my business to the point where I have to get to the next level. I can't do it all anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's a really hard place to get through, I think, because there's a lot of stuff that has to go on in your business, but then financially you have to make sure you can support that and you have cash flow, right? So I think the number one thing I would start with is saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what's the goal? Because 9 times out of 10, when I ask people this question, right, I have a new client, we're having a meeting and we're sitting here talking. I say, like, Kyle, what's your goal? What do you want to do with your business? I know you know what your goals are, but a lot of people will look at me like, I don't know. And then they'll say, well, I've done $10,000 a month. Now I want 25. I'm at 25. Now I want to get to $1 million.
It's just a lot of numbers thrown out.
Like I'm getting close to $1 million. I want to do 10 million. And I stop. I'm like, but why? Why? Like, what's the point of that? I've seen businesses who do 10 million in revenue who make less money because their profit margins are so bad than a business owner who has the right business model who's making less than $1 million in revenue.
So
it's not all about that.
I know we've thrown out the word profit margins
Yes.
because we understand. Can you talk to people like what is that and what's the importance of profit margins?
Yes, that's a good question. So profit margins is when you have your sales, you take out all your expenses, everything you're spending in your business, your payroll, marketing, anything else, right? Office space, subtract out all your expenses, you're left with profit.
Got it.
And you want to have a good profit because out of that, you need to pay yourself and you need to make sure you have a cushion for your business so that if we have a pandemic or a recession or something else going on, that you've got cash flow coming in,
Exactly.
right? So profit
what would
margin,
be your, I guess, recommended percentage profit margin wise?
It depends. I like to say a lot of people maybe aren't considering their pay in their expenses because if you think about it, when you go to do your tax return for most business owners, if you're an LLC, right, your pay is not considered a deductible business expense unless you become an S corp, and I don't want to go down in the tax jargon land. But
sure.
A lot of people maybe aren't considering like, okay, sales minus marketing minus my employees, contractors, office space, all this stuff, I'm left with 10%. But like that's probably not enough because you also have to pay yourself, right? You as the business owner, you're probably doing a lot of the work for the business and you need to be compensated for that. And people forget that.
How much?
I would just
Give it to us, Sarah.
Start with a market rate,
Okay.
right? Like if you were to grow your business and have to outsource whatever you're doing, how much would you have to pay somebody to do that?
That's an interesting perspective. I don't look at it that way. And that's probably why I'm in the financial place that I'm in. And I think I even teach differently as well because, I have mentees that come to me like, what should I be paying myself? And I go off of the profit first model.
I like the profit first model.
Talk to us about it.
So I like the profit first model, but I like to say there's really 2 ways you get compensated as a business owner. And I think he even talks about this in the book.
For anybody who doesn't know,
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're speaking.
I know.
What is the profit first model?
Yes. So Profit First is a book. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's quick. It's a little bit hokey, I will say, the writing, but I think it's a really good model in that he talks about pay yourself first out of your business. So a lot of people, business owners, they get sales, right? They have cash coming in and they say, okay, what do I spend this on? And then they spend all the money and they look and they're like, well, what do I pay myself with whatever's left? Like, that's probably, you're going to end up with not paying yourself that much, right?
Exactly.
And so he says, he talks about a cash management system, basically using your bank accounts to try to make it easy because I've seen too where people have cash in their account and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. And then they feel paralyzed, right? Like, what a problem to have. But it happens.
What a problem.
And so he talks about having sort of a system of bank accounts, right? You put money into operating expenses, you put money into the bucket for taxes, for profit savings, but also, and first and foremost, is probably your pay, right?
Got it.
So you can make sure you're setting aside money for pay. And he likes to say for businesses up to 250 in revenue to do 50% of your sales as pay.
How do you feel about that from your perspective?
I think it's hard for people. It's a great goal. I think it's a great goal. I think it's hard for people because if you look at that and you're like, well, I'm doing, 100,000 in sales, right? Like to get from 0 to 100 is hard. I'm not paying myself $50,000. Like, am I a failure? No. And so one other thing he talks about in the book is to say, well, look where you're at now and divide it out. Figure out, well, if I'm not paying myself 50%, maybe it's 25%. Maybe I take 5% out of the expense bucket, put it into the pay bucket, and just slowly work my way towards, paying myself 50%. But I guess where I was going earlier is I think there's two things you're paying yourself for in the business. One is the work you do in the business, right? You are the person who, like I'm a CFO. Until last year, I was a bookkeeper, I was a tax person, I was a controller, I was a payroll admin, right? And so I've slowly outsourced, and people do that. As you grow, you'll outsource the roles. And so you have to think, well, I'm spending, 50% of my time as the CEO, the other 50% I'm doing the client work. And so making sure you're compensating yourself for the work you're doing in the business to get a more realistic view of, okay, the business can support all of the people that it needs to have in place to, run, and then be left over with profit margin, right?
Got it.
So if you're left over with profits after you're able to pay yourself a market rate, I would say target at least 10% there, right? If you're doing less than 5%, that's probably not sustainable in the long run, and it's going to fluctuate over time. The higher the better, obviously, but when people get to 20%, I think that's probably not sustainable either, because what will happen is you're either going to have to invest some money back into the business to grow because you're getting to a bigger level, or maybe you have a competitor come in and they're like, shoot, I see you over here doing this. I'm going to come in and try to jump in on that too. And then it creates more competition. So 10% is a good target. The higher the better. But I wouldn't project out to say, I'm going to make 50% profit margin. That it's probably just not realistic in the long run.
So once you have this profit, and I want to get into your story as well.
Yeah.
But anybody listening right now, you better be taking notes. Once you get to the profit, let's say you've paid yourself, you've done all these different things. What do you do with the profit? Is it just sit in a savings account? Does it go to an IRA? Does it go into business investments? How do you, allocate the profit?
That's where I think it's really important to be able to answer the question, what am I doing here?
Got it.
So I'll use myself as an example, right? Because I think when I ask people, what do you want to do with your life? What's the purpose of your business? The answers can vary, right? Some people might say, look, I just want to put money in a retirement account and maybe retire when I'm 50, 55. I'm good with that, right? The more traditional model. That's still younger than most people would retire.
Yeah.
Me personally, I'm 34. I want to be able to not retire, but relax within 10 years at the most. Right?
What does that look like for you?
I'm just going to be real. I probably am going to keep working because I like to work. I like to have an impact on people, but I would really
Do you like the work or do you like your work?
I like my work. I like the impact that I'm able to have on people. And so within, that 10-year time span, I want to be able to say you know what, financially I'm set. Anything I make above and beyond this, I'm happy with that. That's just gravy. And if I want to do work, I can. If I want to go on vacation, I can. If I want to, shut my laptop and not open it again for a month, I can. Just that freedom. That's what it looks like for me, I think.
When you think about a retirement number, because I think that's, in society, we teach retirement. Mm-hmm. How much money would you have to have in the bank? Or in regards to assets or equity, how much money do you have to be able to really retire?
There's no one answer for that because everybody's different. Okay. If you go to a traditional financial planner, they're going to have to do all this crazy math, right, to tell you the number. And I think you can at least start simplistically. That's called the rule of 4. So you can take your annual spend and calculate based on what I spend, basically divide it by 4% because I'll try to simplify it, right? If you have $1 million in the bank, if you were to safely say I could take out 4% every year, that would theoretically, based on the returns you're going to get, based on averages and taking inflation into account. Like, I'm trying not to spit out jargon.
Nah, this
right?
is good.
The rule says you should be able to take out 4% and you're not going to lose your $1 million, right? The $1 million will grow. It'll have a return. You'll be able to basically live off of the returns.
Got it.
So whatever your annual spend is, you want to be able to fit into that 4%. And now some people are going to argue like, that's not enough. That doesn't work. What about this? What about that? And I'm like, that's great. That's what financial planners are there to help you with. But I think just as a starting point, like a gut check, if you've never even thought about it before, you take your annual spend. Let's say I need $50,000 a year to live off of. And I can't do math in my head, y'all. I can't. $50,000 a year. What assets would I need to live off of the 4%?
Got it. So the 50,000 to live would have to be 4% of what you need.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
So anybody that's listening, what she just broke down, if you kind of got lost in the numbers, because I'm a numbers guy, so I understand. So let's say you have monthly expenses that are $5,000 a month. You multiply that by 12. That's $60,000. You need at least, what is 60,000? What number is 4%? Well, what number is 60,000 4% of?
Yep.
And then that's what you need to be able to retire.
Yes.
Or if you think about what you want your lifestyle to be within the next 10 years, 12 years, your expenses may increase. But whatever that number is, has to be 4% of the number that you need. Is that liquid or in assets?
Just in assets. Yeah, just in assets. And again, that's just a starting point because there's other things you want to consider as you're looking at retirement, right? But for me, I'm going to go back to the original question, right? I'm using myself as an example of like, what is a good profit margin to have, right? And then like, where are you going to go? And I guess where I was going was my number, I know my sort of safe number is $2.5 million. That's my number.
Okay.
If I could get 3, that's better. If I could get 4, that's better. The reason I bring this up is my business is going to generate a lot of that. And so my personal plan is not necessarily to put money into an IRA or a 401k. My plan is to use my business to be able to say, like, what if I could get $2 million for it one day? And there's a huge part of my number, right?
Stop there. You're going over people's heads, Sarah. You're speaking good. So talk to me about the importance of building a business to be able to sell, or build a business, scale it, sell it so that it could be able to retire you. Talk to us about that. Because that's what you're saying essentially, right?
Yeah. Well, you have options, right? I actually worked with a business owner a couple years ago. It was one of my first actual CFO clients, and he was ready to retire but had never thought about it before. Wow. And his profit margin was like 2 or 3% every year. And when you go to sell a business, it depends on the industry you're in. There's different numbers they use, but they use a multiple is what they call them. So they take your earnings. Let's say you generate $100,000 a year in net earnings, right? Profits. They're going to say maybe the multiple is 3. And so you get 3 times earnings or 4 times earnings. Some industries are going to base it on revenue. Everybody's different. It's hard to just throw like.
Is that how they evaluate? Yes,
that's how they put a number on what your business is worth. So your business is worth basically, it's a function of the cash flow you produce. So if you want to sell your business, it's in your best interest to optimize your cash flow.
So if you're making $1 million a year, you multiply that by 3 and your business is valued at $3 million.
Somebody will give you $3 million. Yes.
Interesting.
If the multiple is 3.
Who chooses the multiple, or does it depend on the investor or the company?
It just depends. It depends on the industry. So I'll use this business as an example. When I came in, their earnings were like 2 to 3%. They were having major cash flow problems. And we just looked at, well, what's dragging that down? It's a function of pricing, needing to get rid of some contracts, needing to better manage their labor costs because they were skyrocketing. Like all these different factors pull down their cash flow. And so we were able to get it up, and then they ended up having somebody come in who was in their industry and just wanted to grow their business. And so they said, hey, I want to buy your business. So we gave the financials, and they came back and said, okay, based on your earnings. And then they gave them a little extra because they were also buying assets. This business had a lot of equipment and things. So it's just a function of the earnings, plus they're going to also take some of the equipment and inventory they had on hand and like, here's your money.
Wow.
There you go.
You do this. You're an expert. because I feel like I'm just learning. I feel like I'm in class today, Sarah. This is amazing.
I used to be a teacher, so it should
This
feel
is
like
definitely amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't want anybody, I feel like we're in a whole webinar right now. I don't want anybody to miss like who you are as an individual. And the overall goal of the podcast is being able to pull the curtain behind the brand and the business and really get to know the person. So without titles, without anything, who are you?
Well, I already said I'm a mom. I think that's important.
That's a title.
I used to be a teacher. Oh, that's a title too.
That's a title. So mom, wife, teacher.
Yep.
No titles.
That's hard. Well, I won't give you my other titles then. Honestly, like I said, I just want to enable other people, right? So like you have goals. I don't want the finances to be something that holds you back from being able to achieve those. Like I want you to be able to find stability and like have more peace in your life, and not have all of the stress and overwhelm that comes along with like, I don't know how to manage my cash flow for my business.
Okay.
And I think I also I'm not a traditional accountant either. Like I want to be more approachable to people who maybe don't feel comfortable going to the traditional accountants, because if you go and look out there, if you go look for a CPA in your business, statistically speaking, they're going to be in their mid to late 50s and they're probably going to be a white man,
Exactly.
right? This goes for CPAs, this goes for financial planners, this goes for a lot of lawyers and other people for your business. And I work with, I'm a woman, right? I work with a lot of women. And they'll say to me, like, I just feel like I can talk to you and you're not going to judge me and you're not going to like, wave your finger at me and tell me I'm doing it all wrong. Like you're going to help me do better. And so like, that's what I want to be to more people. It's because I think, if you look at the numbers of people starting businesses in the last year in 2020, like there were just record numbers of people quitting their jobs, starting businesses. A lot of them were women. I actually read a statistic the other day that said 64% of businesses started by women during the pandemic were women of color.
Wow.
And so I think just the statistics of people who don't fit the traditional model of, like old family-owned business, just like I've had people before me running a business, like just that traditional sort of model. I think there's more and more people who don't fit that. And I just want to be able to support those people. I feel like myself, I'm a driven business owner. Like I want to do some good in the world. And I also want to work with people who want to do some good in the world. So.
Exactly. I love that. You are very driven. And even with the goal of 3 million, 4 million, 2.5, whatever number it is, I feel like I definitely believe that you're going to get there. And I think a lot of times people that support people or people that are so focused on supporting other people, like you said, enabling people, oftentimes forget the support that they need in certain areas. What is some support? Where are some areas in your life where you could use some more support?
Oh man, I could give you a list. No, I'm that way. I think a lot of us as business owners, we operate at 150% capacity all the time, and it's hard for me anyways to stop and just, let it be. And so I think my support that I need for right now, honestly, my business is doing great. For me personally, I need to figure out how to take better care of myself, because I actually have heard people say, like, if you look at the really successful business owners and CEOs out there, a lot of them do really put time and energy into taking care of themselves, because what they're doing is a high stress job and they almost take care of themselves like they're an athlete, right? Like my ability to be successful and to come on here and talk to you today with energy and to go talk to my clients and lift them up and do all that stuff is driven by like me having, the energy and taking care of myself. And so that's where I personally struggle, is stepping back, because I tend to put my value on my success, right? And into work. That's just how I was raised, honestly. Okay. And so, business wise, I feel like I'm doing great. I just hired another CPA. I've got 3 employees, a couple contractors. Congrats. Like we're going like gangbusters over here. Like it's great. And so now I'm sort of at the point where I'm shifting to say, like, how can I balance this better? Because it was really hard to get to the point from where you have nothing to building a business where you have employees and you're able to outsource some of the day-to-day stuff, right?
Exactly.
So like, how can I do a better job of taking care of myself so that I can show up better for my clients and for my family and for everybody else in my life? So that's where I need support.
I think it's important sometimes to really commit to the process instead of the outcome. And I think for both of us, success is the expectation. Mm-hmm. And we work hard so that we can be able to accomplish that. And that's the only option. But a lot of times we do forget about ourselves. A lot of times we put ourselves on the back burner, and then we try to put something on the burner and it's no fire anymore. What keeps you motivated? What keeps your fire burning?
That's a good question. I mean, I think what keeps me going in my business is as I've shifted my business model in the last year, because I recognized I was trying to serve everybody and do everything, and I needed to do a better job of focusing so I could work more one-on-one with people and have that like transformation for them. And so when I have people who are like, you know, this, they tell me like, this is taking the stress out of my life. Like, this is helping me like do better at my business. That keeps me going. It's just like seeing them be more successful. And then also just personally, right? Like, I come from, like, I worked at the Big Four for years. Mm-hmm. And so if anybody doesn't know, those are the big accounting firms, and they basically work you as many hours as you can. Then I left there after about 4 years. I went and I worked at a public company here in Charlotte and climbed the corporate ladder, right? I started as a senior. I left as a senior director. Could have kept going, I think, but I just sort of looked at, you know, everybody around me and I said, I just don't want this for my life. You know, like, I think everybody's stressed out and working so many hours, but for what? You know, like, what are you doing it for? And I just felt like, I'm here. I'm like serving the shareholders, right? Like, who are they even,
who are they?
Right? And then I started my business on the side, and I realized the impact that I could have, while also giving me the opportunity to create more time freedom so that when I had my son, I can take the time and hang out with him if I want to, you know, versus when I used to work at these corporate jobs, like, people, they would be the last one to pick up their kids from daycare every day and the first one to drop them off, and work on the weekends, work at nights. I'm like, that's just not what I want my life to be, you know?
I like what you just said. Like, who are you doing it for? Why am I doing it? And that's something that I really want everybody listening to ask themselves. Like, why am I doing? What do I want? And who am I doing this for? With those three questions, who are you doing it for? Why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. And what do you really want?
Mm-hmm. So somebody a few months ago put it to me this way, and they said, what is the injustice that you're serving? And I thought that was actually a really good question, because I think that when I look at business owners who, whatever they do, they're the expert in that area. They want to have an impact. Like, nobody starts a business thinking like, oh, you know, I'm just going to chill and maybe make some money here. Like,
Exactly.
Nobody really does that, right? I think for me, I think it's just sad. I'll use the example I pulled on before. The business owner who built this business but didn't have a retirement plan. When it came time, he was like, I have no choice here. I've not even thought about it. And I'm like, my back's up against the wall. Like, am I going to make enough money? Like, what can I do? What are my options? Or do I just have to keep working until I'm 80? Right.
Exactly.
Like, I think it goes back to financial security. I don't want to just say like, I'm here to help you make more money. You know, like, it's not all about the money. It's about like, what is it that you want to do with your life? And there's no real cap on your earnings as an entrepreneur. And so how can you best leverage that to achieve those goals? Exactly. I think is what we're all here for. So that's sort of like who I do it for. I like to work with business owners who are like me, who are like, I'm really into this one thing I do. They're really passionate. They want to make an impact on other people. And they just need help with the money side to get it going.
What is one goal or one commitment that you're focused on in this season that you're currently in that you got to accomplish?
For me, it's the shift from doing so many like one-on-one clients that I've been doing, and we'll continue to do those, but I'm building a team to take care of that day-to-day stuff, because what I found is I feel like I am, like, my skill set is better talking to people, educating people, making it more approachable, talking more about, like, what's your strategy? What are you doing here? And so I want to be able to do more of that. And so right now I'm working on developing my first program, right? So I can not do the work for them, but, impact more people who are in a similar stage, right? Of, I've started my business, I know what I'm doing, but I just don't know how to get to the next level, and the financial side stresses me out.
That makes sense.
And
what are your action steps? So somebody that is trying to make that shift, somebody that is really trying to transition from solo entrepreneur to business owner, what would be 3 or 4 steps that you would give them to take?
So I think it goes back again to, what's your goal and what are you really trying to do? And don't come tell me you want to do $1 million because it sounds good, right? Yeah. Like, what do you want to do and why? So having a plan. And then inevitably there's something going on with profitability or cash flow, right? So we're going to optimize that and make sure we understand, do you have the right team, or what are the steps to get the team in place so that you can grow and become more of a business owner? Are you spending the right money on marketing, right? Because a lot of people, they spend some money on marketing, and I don't know if it always results in a good ROI for them. And then just, are you paying yourself enough, right? Like, inevitably, I think business owners don't pay themselves. They don't get in the habit of actually physically transferring that money into their pocket, and so, like, getting into a habit of paying yourself first, profit first, right?
Exactly.
So that as you grow, right, you're not personally having to, rely on credit cards to pay your living expenses for the month, so you can buy a house, right? So you can take care of your family while you also grow your business. Because I think we have these visions of, like, okay, in 5 years, my business will be big enough to generate profit, and then I can pay myself, right?
That's good.
But what about the in-between? Like, why can't you take care of yourself now?
It's like, you don't need to struggle as you're building your business. There's ways that you can strategically do this to be intentional with your whole financial plan, in a sense, as well.
Yes.
When you think about all of what you just said, I have a question that I've been having the question, and it keeps getting asked to me. Who do I hire first, Kyle? Who do I hire first? And anybody listening, I'm sure they have that question.
Yes.
Because you talk about team, but who's the first hire usually?
In my opinion, it depends. It always depends, right? You have to think about the ROI, and ROI is return on investment. And so when you go to hire somebody, you want to think about, where am I spending my time as the business owner that I could easily outsource to somebody else, and I could pay them a set amount, and I'm going to get a good return off of that. So let's say you pay somebody, your first hire might be a part-time person to do some administrative type work.
Got it. Maybe
you're going to pay them $30,000 a year, right? They're part-time. I don't know. I'm just making numbers up that I can do in my head. I'm used to calculators, so I have to take easy numbers. So let's say you're going to pay them $30,000 a year to work for you part-time. How much revenue are you going to get from them doing that? And it's either going to be they are doing client work, which enables you to increase your capacity, or it takes time off of your plate, it takes tasks off of your plate, so you can then go and do more of what you do best and more of that higher level stuff, the revenue generating activities, right?
Got it.
So I think...
What are some revenue generating activities?
I think just sales, obviously, going out talking to people, doing like networking, visibility moments, getting on people's podcasts, doing speaking, just getting your name out there. If you sell a product, like going to shows, getting your product in places, stuff like that. But also like CEO time, right? So like taking the time to actually work on your business and, to think about the ideas you have and how to make things better. I think that kind of goes to the wayside. At least it used to for me. Like, I would just never take the time to develop new things because I was always so in the weeds on the work.
So kind of put somebody in the weeds so that you could focus on the vision.
Yes. Got it. And I think, there's a question, right? Do you hire an admin person because they're going to be less expensive? Or, I think some people want to find like the unicorn who can just do it all. And I haven't,
That's not realistic.
I haven't seen that work out well, really. So I think for me, and I'll speak from experience, my first hire was a bookkeeper.
Okay.
Because I had enough client work where I could outsource, the day-to-day sort of administrative coding type things that I didn't want to spend my time on. And so I hired somebody who could do those sort of transactional things, free up a large chunk of my time. But I didn't hire somebody who was green, who I had to train, right? I hired somebody who was experienced enough to be able to do it on their own without me having to spend the time like training, right?
So Sarah, what if I don't have the money to hire? What if I'm an early entrepreneur that doesn't have the finances to hire, but I have so much work and it's stopping me from really being able to grow my business? What do I do?
You're probably underpricing.
Got it.
Here's what I think. If you are hustling all the time and you still don't feel like you are making enough money to do some of these things, my first question is going to be, are you pricing enough? High enough? I know a lot of people tend to want to undercharge, especially when you first start out, because you want people to hire you, right? You are afraid if you charge too much.
You need results, you need receipts,
Yep,
all this.
yes. And I get that. I understand. I was there. I have been there. But I think that if the financials are holding you back, then either you're priced too low, or maybe your costs are too high, or maybe you just need to repackage what you're doing, right? To make it so that you can grow faster. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. One thing that I did early on, like years ago, like the beginning, somebody told me every single expense should have an asset paying for it. So let's say if I have a $2,000 mortgage payment, then I should have a $2,000 recurring client every single month. Let's say I have $150 in home bills or expenses, then I should have potentially $150 in memberships or subscriptions, or something set up where you look at your bills, whether it's business or personal, and then you attach some type of product, service, subscription, membership, consulting, something to that so that it covers everything. So now from a personal standpoint, all my bills are paid for the next 6 months because we built the business. Now you can have, I guess, some freed up in your mind to be able to do other things as well.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I think, it's different if you think service-based versus product-based,
Exactly.
right? Service-based, I like the stability of a monthly recurring revenue stream.
Yes.
But it's not for everybody.
No.
Right? It's not. Maybe you do need a different type of model, but one where you feel confident, you can fill up those spots that you need to, or maybe you get to the point where you have a wait list, and so you feel confident you have that money coming in.
Exactly.
But I'll also say, I think it's important to have a cushion. Because
What does a cushion look like?
a cushion, meaning just like an emergency fund for your
How much?
business, right? I would say at least 2 months of expenses.
Okay.
At least, right? We all have just been through a
That's
year and a
moderate.
half of a pandemic,
Okay.
right? If you don't have any savings, work up to 2 months. I'd say 3 is better. Some people will say 6 months, and then I start to say it depends on the business. I think when you start to save so much money, then you are inhibiting the cash flow because you could redeploy that money right into your business. And so there's a give and take there.
That's an interesting perspective. Talk more about that. Because I think it is this ideology, like I'm supposed to save as much money as possible. But how is that hurting people as well from a cash flow perspective?
Yeah, well, I go back to the same question I always ask, which is, what's it for? So what's it for? If your goal is to put money in a retirement account, why is that money not in a retirement account?
Good.
Right? If your goal, like me, is to buy real estate, why don't you put it into a fund where you can use it to earmark it for real estate? If you want to grow your business, why not make the investment? If you have the cash sitting there, cash just sitting in your bank account, on the normal account most of us have, inflation is what now? 2-3% a year? You're not making 2 to 3% in interest, right?
So if I want to get a real estate property, let's say I want to buy a home or buy a commercial building or buy a rental property, and I have all this money that I'm saving, is there a specific fund that I should be putting this money in so that it can be accumulating interest?
So here's the thing, right? You have retirement accounts. If you put the money in a retirement account, it's hard to touch it without paying penalties or taxes, right, when you pull it out. So I would say put the money in the retirement account if you want it to stay in the retirement account. If I want to buy a property within the next 5 years, then I would say, it's good to have money in cash if you think you're going to have an outflow in like really soon, like in the next year, maybe 2 years. It just depends, because here's what happens. I have money in a brokerage account, right? Like a brokerage account, meaning I just went to Fidelity. I opened up a free account. I put money into stocks within my brokerage account, right? What happens if I don't have any cash and I have to sell right now, today, to pay for something? Or what if my husband, he loves real estate. What if he goes out and he finds a property and he wants to buy it? And to get the money, I have to sell out of that brokerage account. What if the timing is bad and the market's down and you have to sell at a loss? Like, that really sucks,
It
you
does.
know? So there's a balance, right? Everybody kind of has to find their own answer. I'd say for me, like, we have money we put into a brokerage account because we don't plan on touching it for a while. We have retirement accounts, but we also just keep some in cash as an emergency fund. And that would go for your business or personal life, right? Like, everybody needs some emergency money. But I think, if you think you're going to have a big purchase in the near future, I would hesitate to put it into like stocks or something, because you run that risk, right, of it just the bottom falls out. Right. Exactly. And so you don't want to be forced into selling at a time that's not, great. That's not ideal. So hopefully that answered the question.
No, definitely. When you look back on your life and just who you've become as a woman now, what is one experience or one story that really knocked you down that you had to build back up from?
Oh, that's a good one. So I talked about being a teacher, right? Mm-hmm. Before I was a teacher, I was very shy and very reserved. No confidence whatsoever. Throw me in a classroom with 30 plus kids trying to teach them algebra and geometry, like, that totally changed, right? Like, I never would have done something like this. How many years ago was that? I don't want to say.
It's okay.
15 years ago, right? Yeah. Like, when I was in high school, never would have done it because I just lacked a lot of confidence. And so I think, I don't know, like, something that knocked me down, like, the first thing that comes to my mind is because of my, like, lack of confidence, I ended up personally just in relationships that did not serve me, right? And so it wasn't until I gained my own self-confidence and said, like, I don't need this, that I allowed myself to let it go.
Give me 3 steps that you did. What were 3 things that you did?
Oh, I don't know. I think I finally just one day, it's hard when you're in, like, personal relationships with people, right, that you've been in with for a long time. Like, it's hard to just step back and say, whoa, like, this is not where I want to be, right? So I think it's just thinking about, where do you want to go in life and what do you want to accomplish, and does this get you there?
Exactly.
The same can be said for your business. Like, I'm saying that, right? And it's like, if you're investing in something in your business, if it's not serving you, don't be afraid to let it go. And just say, like, oh my gosh, like, if I put so much time and energy into this thing, it's not serving me, and I'm afraid to let it go. But, like, don't throw good money after bad if you're talking about business or personally, right? Like, for me, it was, don't throw more time after it. Like, it's just not worth it anymore. And so I think just, like, stepping back, recognizing that, and then saying, like, you know what, like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to rely on myself. Like, I can do this on my own. I don't know if that was 3 steps, but
no, that was good. That was good. Probably not 3, but it was amazing. Last question for me. I want you to think about that person that you once were. No confidence, walking around in relationships that didn't serve you. If there's somebody listening right now on this podcast that is that person, and they may be older, they may be younger, whatever they're going through, what would be your message to that person?
I think for me, it's just, don't be afraid to be authentic to yourself, right? I think, like, don't be afraid to be who you are. I think a lot of times we put on this show for people, right? Like, I'm a big business owner, I'm successful, I'm, whatever. I think just being authentic to who you are and who you want to be, and know, like, you have your own path, your own story, and that's okay. You're the only one that lives your life. Like, nobody else should weigh you down. So I think just, like, recognize that, and, like, it's okay to let it go if it doesn't serve you.
What's next for Sarah Young?
Oh, what's next? For me, I'm almost like starting another business, right? Like, not not really, but I'm going to take my business. I'm working on training up a team to run the day-to-day stuff so that I can, swoop in and have my strategy sessions and be the face and do all of that for my business. But I really am excited about starting up a program, helping more people. Like, I have a vision of just creating a community of people who are driven business owners who are all in the same place. Because I think as a business owner, I've found it's easy to feel isolated. Exactly. And it's easy to feel like I'm the only one with these issues. Like, you are not. Everybody has these issues. And so I just sort of have this vision of like creating almost like a community out of it and making it so, people aren't afraid to talk about money and wealth, right? And what that means, and what that would do in their lives, and just sort of destigmatizing it, right? Like, we all want to pursue money, but we're also afraid to talk about it. And so that's sort of my vision, right? It's just like creating this. And how I do that, I have no freaking clue. But it's going to start. Figure it out. I'll figure it out. That's where I want to go. And I mean, eventually this is crazy, but I watch The Prophet on, I forget what channel it's on, but it's a TV show. He goes in and he invests in businesses that are struggling. He brings in like support to help them, fix their problems and make more money. And like, I want to do that. That's my like goal too. I want to be able to invest in other businesses, especially those like especially women-owned businesses. They have a really hard time getting investors, getting loans, all of that stuff. Like, I just want to be able to invest in them to help them grow. That would make me really happy if I could do that.
No, you're definitely going to do it. You're definitely going to do it. Where can we find you, Sarah?
You can find me on the Instagram. I'm at YoungCoCFO. And that's kind of where I am pretty much every day. I have my website. We can link it. Come find me. I give out lots of free advice, on Instagram. I have tried to do a weekly live. I might start a podcast one day. Who knows? And then I try to give good tips in my newsletter too. So, Perfect. Come check it out. The link is in my Instagram bio too.
How can someone work with you?
Yeah, so now is a time of year, it's September, and now is a time of year when people are starting to think about, let's get my money in order, right? Exactly. And so I have, a monthly CFO program that's ideal for a little bit more established business owners who need more hands-on cash flow management, planning, all of that stuff, in addition to the day-to-day work. I also have a tax package where I don't do tax prep only, but it's like if you need help with that piece, but you want to have more support throughout the year and you want to have somebody actually who will talk to you, that's me. So I have a tax package too. And then I'm also coming out with a program, like I said, that is literally, I downloaded my brain into this curriculum of like, I'm a solopreneur. I want to get to the next level. What are all of the steps that I would need to have in place to, get that in order from a financial perspective? And I'm really excited about that. So that's amazing. That's going to start in October.
Okay. Anybody listening, please get your money right. Please get your money right. But first, get your mind right. Understand who is in your circle, who is around you that probably isn't serving you, and what decisions do you need to make? What choices do you need to make so that you can be one step ahead? Before we start thinking about finances, you have to first think about yourself. Before you start thinking about the wealth that you want to be able to build, you want to think about all of the small steps that it's going to take over a period of time to be able to get to the place of where you want to be in your future. This is Sarah Young. We are on the Round the Way podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.